Welcome to the Bad Roman Podcast. On this show, we talk with veterans, community leaders, Christians and non-Christians as we explore the entanglement of Christians with the state. The Bad Roman Project was created out of the firm belief that as Christians, we are called to follow Christ, not the state. Here is your host, Craig Hargis.
Hey folks, many of y'all know one of my favorite topics is one's journey from a statist to no king but Christ understanding, which is why I'm excited to have Patrick Green, the host of 100-Fold Testimonies podcast, on the show. We're going to get to hear his testimony and so much more today.
Let's go. Yeah. Left, right, left, right, left. We got our marching orders, man. Left, right. We'd rather serve God than serve Caesar, you feel me? Right. I'm just trying to live what he said. I'm just trying to live.
Patrick, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Craig.
Yes, this is cool. We got to finally get this locked down to have a conversation about your story. And like I said in the intro, these types of conversations are some of my favorite because that's kind of how we started this podcast, was my story. You know, how we started this project. And along the way, I've gotten to talk to so many different people about their stories along the way and how they woke up one day and just realized we're kind of doing this wrong. We're not following Jesus as he had laid out for us to do. And we've spent so much time worshiping the state. I think you even mentioned that in the initial email when you reached out, that your story involves the worship of the state, you know, and I think a lot of us were that. I think most, if not all of us who listen to the show were like that. And I think most, if not all of us, I don't think we realized we were worshiping the state. We were just kind of doing what everybody else was doing. We thought it was our duty to do this, to participate in government. And it's just not true. It's just, once you really kind of dive into the teachings of Christ, it's one of these things when he opens his stuff up to you. And I think, and I want to get into this with you a little bit throughout the show too. It seems to me a lot of this kind of happens in different time periods for different people where they're setting, because I've seen a lot of people throughout this project. I'll see people get frustrated with other newbies, I would say, or, new people to what we're talking about. And they just think they should have it all figured out all at the same time as they did. And I don't think that's fair, because I don't think it's fair to the new person, and I don't think it's right for the person to kind of give them a hard time about it either, because you're going to run this person off. They're new to this. If people were treated me like that when I first came in, because I could push back with the best of them, and I will find a reason not to pay attention to you if you're going to give me any grief about me asking questions. But thankfully, I fell into a circle of people who were kind enough to kind of walk me through it, because I had a lot of questions when I came into this, and I'm sure you did too as well. And I apologize, but before we get too far into it, I want to get some background from you. How you came about hearing about the Bad Roman, because, like I said, it's kind of cool that I'm getting to hear another story like this today. Stories like this re-energize me, remind me of why we do what we do.
Yeah, you hit on a great topic. I found out about you through my good buddy Eric, who's followed you since you started. And, Eric was really a mentor to me. He was the most instrumental person in my, red pilling, if you want to call it that. But he went about it in a very smart, mentor-like way. He didn't talk down to me. He didn't tell me I was an idiot. I know he was thinking it probably, but he didn't. He planted the right seeds and gave them time to grow. And I mean, him and I started talking about this in 2014, maybe 15. And it took me 5, 6, 7 years before it really clicked for me. And he was patient. He just kept hitting me with facts and truth and planted the right seeds. And it took some time, but they grew over time, and my eyes were opened and I saw it. So yeah, I'm a pretty normal, everyday guy. I've been married 10 years. I own a construction company in Denver. So there's really nothing that special about me. Just my story, my life story happens to perfectly align with the theme of your show. What I'd love to do is first just share my Christian testimony, which will include a lot about politics. And then we can come back, and I've got all kinds of great topics to discuss about my journey out of statism.
Well, it sounds good to me. Well, let's start with your Christian testimony then, because, and shout out to your friend Eric for turning you on to the Bad Roman Project. I appreciate if he listens to this, thank you, Eric, for that. Thank you for listening to the show. But yeah, let's start with your Christian testimony and just kind of work from there, because the way I've heard these stories over the past 5 years, it seems like you could hear an evolution of how a person comes to understanding what we understand now. And even 5 years later, I'm still learning things that I didn't know 5 years ago. So that's another cool aspect of this, is you never really stop learning about this. You're going to run into somebody else in these circles, especially, who's going to have a different perspective and a way of looking at this that you may not. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll just get right into it. I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I was an altar server until I was about 14, went to Catholic schools, grades 5 through 12. My experience in the Catholic Church was very show up and go through the motions, style over substance, really kind of a judgmental Christian country club. As a young adult, I did not understand the gospel message at all, or who Jesus really was, and I had never read the Bible. I basically went to church when it was convenient, but didn't really want to get too involved in a church. I was afraid if I got too involved, it would ruin my good time, and I didn't want that. I was a lukewarm Christian, and my heart was a little hardened. I was just sucked into the things of the world and living for the things of the world, and that's where my hope and faith was. The devil had me right where he wanted me, comfortable, complacent, and distracted. So my salvation happened in 3 very distinct phases. The first was the barriers which the devil had constructed between me and God were broken down. Second, my heart was broken down and conditioned through personal tragedy to receive Jesus. And then third, I received the word. So phase 1, I used to idolize and put my faith completely in politics and the government. I was very much of the mindset, if the right people just get elected and pass the right laws, everything's going to be better. I was watching news channels and listening to political talk radio for just hours and hours a day. It completely dominated my life, my thoughts, my conversations, just my entire headspace. It was pretty ridiculous. And my poor wife was very, very patient with me through this period of my life. About 2018, I had already been talking to my friend Eric for a few years about politics and government. But when I was 32, I read some really good libertarian books by Lysander Spooner and Murray Rothbard. And those put some really major cracks in that idol for me. And it started revealing the true nature of government, and not just our government, but every government, just the state in general. Darwinist evolution was another major barrier between me and God. I was not taught Darwinist evolution in school as a theory. I was taught it as a fact. And I was left with the impression that this is just what everybody believes. And if you don't believe in this, you're like kind of crazy, and you're a weirdo out there on the fringes of society. And it's difficult to believe in God the Creator and Darwinist evolution at the same time. And I tried to have it both ways for a period of time and went down the divine design path, but that just doesn't really work. Eric, the same friend, gave me Lee Strobel's book, The Case for a Creator, and that book blew my mind. It's an amazing book, and he makes basically a scientific case for God as the creator, and he discusses all sorts of scientific topics like irreducibly complex machines and DNA, cosmology, evolution, all sorts of stuff. And I just had no idea that Christianity could stand up to scientific scrutiny. And my reaction to reading that book, I was honestly pretty angry that I had been lied to in such a brazen way that seemed very clearly designed to drive a wedge between me and God. As part of that, I did a deeper dive into Charles Darwin and learned some pretty interesting things about him. Most people have heard of his famous work, The Origin of Species, but that actually is not the complete title of that work. The complete title is On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. I learned that his cousin, Francis Galton, is the founder of eugenics. I learned that his son, Leonard Darwin, was the chairman of the British Eugenics Society for 17 years. So at this point, I started to realize what this was. Phase 2 was a living nightmare. It was the personal tragedy that broke my heart down to nothing and conditioned it to receive Jesus. In 2019, my wife and I began trying to start a family, and it did not go well. In 3 years, we lost 5 babies in the first trimester, and since then, we've lost 3 more for a total of 8, and we still have no children that have survived. The first time we got pregnant, we were so naive. We were so excited to get a positive pregnancy test and so excited for the 8-week ultrasound. We're in the exam room and the doctor is looking at the ultrasound machine and turns to us and says, I have some concerns. And our hearts hit the floor. We instantly knew we were about to have our hearts broken. And we were caught so off guard because we had what they called a missed miscarriage, which is where the baby has died, but the body hasn't recognized it yet and hasn't physically had the miscarriage. So we went in with no indication anything was wrong and had the rug pulled out from under us. We tried again soon after, but it was a very different experience. We did not feel much excitement at all and just pretty much pure stress. And not only did we not look forward to the first ultrasound, we just were completely dreading it. Second time, same thing happened. Third pregnancy, there was a little more at stake. In the world of fertility, 3 miscarriages in a row is a big deal because it's when they start referring you to specialists because something's wrong, something's up. We were going to get 1 of 2 answers. Either you just had really bad luck or this is going to be the beginning of a whole new journey that's not going to be good. So after losing our 3rd baby, we went down any and all rabbit holes of testing and trying different things. None of the testing could find anything wrong with either of us. And we tried everything from acupuncture to chiropractic to progesterone supplements to Chinese herbs. I mean, you name it, we tried it. We actually had 3 babies that had a heartbeat at 6 weeks, all for us to go back 2 weeks later and find out the baby had died. And one of the worst parts was just the feeling of pure dread in the days leading up to an ultrasound, the car rides, sitting in the waiting room at the clinic. I mean, there aren't separate clinics or waiting rooms for people whose pregnancies are going well versus people in our situation. So talk about a twist of the dagger in your gut. Sitting there in the waiting room, watching very pregnant couples going in and out, full of excitement, while deep down we knew we were there to have our heart broken. And imagine how bad that would be to go through a single time, and then imagine going through it 8 times. It was an absolute living nightmare. This completely broke us, and it broke our hearts and our spirits down to absolutely nothing. We felt spiritually ruined and in a major, major state of despair. We were so angry with God and why he would do this to us. We saw so many other parents who neglected their children and didn't seem to take very good care of them or care to spend much time with them, who could seemingly have as many children as they wanted while we were left here childless. It just seemed so unfair and so wrong. We were completely lost and broken, and we didn't know how we would ever be happy again if we couldn't have children. It was a very, very dark time for us, and we looked for comfort in things of the world like nice vacations to numb the pain, but nothing can even make a dent in that level of despair. And we felt like we couldn't escape it, and we're just constantly surrounded by pregnant women and babies just everywhere. You know, when your mind wants something so bad, it just fixates on it. Just restaurants, checkout lines in the grocery store. We felt like we were always sat right next to or right in front of or behind a pregnant woman. I think we hit rock bottom with this on a beach trip we took to Florida, trying to escape and numb the pain. And this was right after losing our 5th baby. It was the off season, and there was hardly anybody on this enormous beach. We're out set up in our chairs having a good time on this nearly deserted beach. And next thing we know, a very pregnant woman and her husband set up like 10 feet away from us with nobody else out there and start basically having an iPhone photo shoot right there next to us. And I mean, it's not like she was doing anything wrong, but my wife and I looked at each other like, you got to be effing kidding me. Is there no escape from this? Like, why, God, why are you doing this to us? It felt like torture. We had been going to church and praying like crazy for a baby, and so many other people were praying for us, and this prayer wasn't being answered, and we just didn't understand, and we felt so abandoned by God and angry at him. And at this point, we were at a very big risk of having a major separation with God. And that moves my story on to phase 3.
I want to talk to you a little bit about that real quick, though, because I can't imagine. I don't have any children of my own, and I've been married a couple of times, and both times my wives at the time had their own children. So trying to have children and losing 8 children along the way, I can't imagine how one would not be angry with God, especially if you have a faith in God that you believe that he wants what's best for us, and then you're going through 8 different heartbreaks trying to have children. I don't think anybody can blame you for being angry at God. But then there's a aspect of this too. There's got to be something that's going to come out of this that you're not seeing yet. Your wife's not seeing yet. We may not see for a while. And I don't know if that's the case or not. But there's the way I understand God and the teachings of Christ. It seems like that something's going to come out of this that y'all aren't expecting. And I don't know if that's any kind of words of encouragement or not, but because that sounds awful to me, man. Everything that y'all have gone through. And I listened to your first episode on your podcast. You were kind of describing your journey like you're describing now. And I remember you telling the story a little bit. And I was thinking, man, I could imagine if I had tried to have my own children, what that would. I got to tell you this: if you went through all that and you've come back to this point with God, you got a pretty strong faith, and so I think there's going to be a lot that's going to come out of that something good is going to come out of that, because I could have gave up pretty quick. I think of myself, thinking, what are we doing here?
Yeah, well, no, you foresaw the future, or it's already happened, and I'll get to it here in the next 10, 15 minutes.
Okay.
And what you said is exactly right. Our ways are not God's ways, and we can't do God's math. We can't presume to know how he operates and how he works with these things. But yeah, it was really hard. We're sitting here thinking, it's not like we're asking to be rich or for a fancy car or whatever. Like, we're asking for a child, and God, you can do anything. And we were very, very angry at God at this point, very low point, and at great risk for having a very major separation with God. So phase 3 of the story was the turnaround. By the grace of God, instead of having a major separation with him, we turned back toward him and decided to read the entire Bible for the first time in 2021. We used the Bible in a Year app with commentary, which I thought was great. The commentary really helped keep me with the story, especially all the weird stuff you read in the Old Testament. And reading the entire Bible, it changed my life. I had never got the whole story before. There are so many individual verses and chapters in the Bible, and particularly things Jesus said, that are so good. But I feel like it's easy to keep focusing on these narrow items and miss the overall story, which is more important in my opinion. And for me, I couldn't understand the New Testament without understanding the Old Testament. It allowed me to understand the whole story of just humanity and be pulled from the depths of despair by understanding who Jesus really is and what he did for me, and showed me the path forward. I had never gotten the story of the Israelites and how they kept rebelling and then coming back to God over and over again. God would save them and do miracles, and they would worship him, but then they'd turn right back around and rebel against God, and he would punish them. And it was the same cycle, rinse and repeat over and over again, and they couldn't help it. The Old Testament was particularly important to me because it taught me that the world without God and Jesus is utterly bankrupt. Our human nature, in the absence of God and Jesus, we will corrupt and bankrupt everything we touch. We can't help it. It's our sin nature. And we haven't changed one bit in 5,000 years. We're still the exact same people. I mean, Leviticus contains oddly specific guidance against cross-dressing, and it's amazing how applicable that is in 2025. And people got drunk and sinned and got into astrology and mediums and worshiped all sorts of other idols. And this is all 4,000 years ago in the Old Testament. Like all this new age stuff that people are doing now, that's old news. That people have been doing that forever. We're just the same people with new toys and new technology, but our nature is the same. And I'm sure other generations have experienced this, but my millennial generation was raised to think like, oh, we've come so far and we're such an advanced people. No, we're not. We're the exact same people we were 5,000 years ago. We just have new toys and new technology. And Solomon really brought this home for me in Ecclesiastes when he famously says over and over, there's nothing new under the sun. I kept reading all these stories from the Old Testament about people's character and human nature then and comparing it to modern times and our character and our nature now. And it hit me. I was like, yeah, I get it. There's nothing new under the sun. Nothing's changed. We have not changed. The amount of wisdom in the various parts of the Bible is just so profound and true, and in ways that like I can go out and verify with my own eyes and my own life that it really helped me believe that the Bible is the truth. I mean, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, there's so much profound truth that it's just not possible that this came from the minds of mankind. This came from someone much, much higher than us. So in real time, as I was reading the Bible and it was turning my world upside down, I was going about my everyday business and seeing things and having interactions that were like feeding back and reaffirming the truths I was reading in the Bible, mainly how destructive it is to people's lives who live against God and the guidance in the Bible. And when people live their life in alignment with God, it doesn't make all their dreams come true, but they have something so much better. Peace. They're at peace. And seeing those who are under the veil of deception and my own deceptions really became more and more obvious and easy to recognize as I was in this process of being freed from the world of deception. And both reflecting on my own life and looking around at others, it just became so obvious how unsettled and chaotic people's lives are who don't know Jesus, chasing after the things of the world. And that experience and process of having my eyes opened was so strange. It was at the same time both unsettling and calming. I'm having my eyes open to this entire world of deception, but at the same time, I'm learning the truth and that God and Jesus gave me power and autonomy over this scary new world my eyes were being opened to. At the same time, this world of deception was being revealed to me. It was also being revealed to me that I have everything I need to overcome it. So at this point, I understood what Jesus meant when he said to be in the world, but not of it. And I realized that I don't belong here anymore. And I would feel that way for the rest of my earthly existence, that I would feel like a stranger in a foreign land. And that's how it should be. Romans 12:2 says, do not conform to the pattern of this world. And once this happened, I started noticing other people who've experienced the same thing. You can somehow just sort of sense it when you're with somebody who isn't living in the kingdom of this world, but is living in the kingdom of God. And when another person's life is being guided by something that is not of this world, you can just sense it. When it's somebody whose eyes haven't been opened, they'll look at that person and I think they can recognize that something's different about this person, but I can't quite put my finger on it or characterize it. But when somebody sees it whose eyes have also been opened, you know exactly what it is. So prior to this change, I couldn't read 3 verses in the Bible without falling asleep. I just couldn't do it. I tried to read the Bible before and I just couldn't do it. And once this change began in me, I could hardly put it down, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And it really pains me to say this out loud, but when I think about why I had such a different experience reading the Bible now versus before, previously the Bible just didn't truly have authority to me because I didn't truly believe in God the Creator. I think I saw the Bible more as a glorified book of virtues. And once I truly believed in God as the Creator, the Bible had real ultimate authority to me and represented the one and only truth. And I couldn't get enough of it. And God used the Bible in amazing ways to speak to me. And so here's just a couple of the most profound moments that I had reading through the Bible. And I think you'll really like the first one, which was 1 Samuel 8. This is where Israel asks for a king, and Samuel doesn't think it's a good idea. So he asks God, who confirms this is not a good idea. But in that exchange, Samuel feels bad and is distraught because his children are terrible and the people don't want them to be the next leaders and are complaining for a king. And this is the part that really hit me like a ton of bricks. God tells Samuel, it is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king. And I felt so convicted by that because I saw that I had rejected God in the exact same way by putting all my faith and hope in our government and politics instead of God. And God used the words in the Bible to speak directly to me, and he held up a mirror and showed me my heart and one of the greatest deceptions I was living in. The first time I read 1 Samuel 8, I was instantly cured of any and all remnants of worshiping the government and politics. That was completely it right then and there. Whatever was left of that idol was completely smashed. And as if that wasn't enough, the remainder of that chapter, it was as if God doubled down with me just to make sure I got the message and showed me that government is rotten to the core by describing that core to me. So this is God talking to Samuel. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights. He will take your sons and make them serve with his chariots and horses, and they will run in front of his chariots. Some he will assign to be commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s, and others to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and still others to make weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his attendants. He will take 1/10 of your grain and your vintage and give it to his officials and attendants. Your male and female servants and the best of your cattle and donkeys he will take for his own. He will take 1/10 of your flock, and you yourselves will become his slaves. And obviously some of that language is a little antiquated, but when I read that, it blew my mind because I thought, this is 3,000 years ago, and it doesn't sound like anything has changed. And it really hit me that God is speaking to me through the Bible to give me these universal and timeless truths about our human nature.
Well, I want to say something too before we go any further, because you kind of segued into 1 Samuel 8 kind of nicely, because when you were talking about what you notice that nothing's really changed over the past 4,000 or 5,000 years, and it's something I've asked often, just in conversation, just normal conversation out, at work or whatever, when you see all the stuff that we're seeing on social media and all these 24-hour news cycles and stuff. And I'm like, has the world always been this way, or is it just getting crazier? And I think you're right. I think it's always been this way. We just haven't had access to all of it the way we do right now. And going into, you said something too also, and it reminded me of a quote. I don't know if you're familiar with Origen. He's one of the early church fathers. And when you were talking about you don't belong here anymore, it reminded me of this quote. It was in an article I wrote for the website. It was, he said, the Christians form among themselves secret societies that exist outside the system of laws. an obscure and mysterious community founded on revolt and on the advantage that accrues from it. What he's saying there is he's pointing out that we don't belong in this system. We don't belong in this world. And just kind of like what you were coming to realize throughout your journey to get to where you are now. And I think that when you were talking about that, it reminded me of something that Origin had said. I was like, that's pretty cool. To me, that kind of goes together. Hey folks, do you like salsa? I love salsa. I have come up with a fire recipe, and we have been shipping this homemade salsa all across the country. If you like salsa and want a cool way to support the project and spread the message of no king but Christ, then holler at us. You can reach us at badromansalsa@gmail.com or visit the official Bad Roman Salsa Facebook page and message us there. Thank y'all so much for your continued support. Now let's get back to the show. Now, getting back to 1 Samuel 8 and tying that into nothing has really changed. We just got past this last election cycle, and I hate election years. I hate them now. I can't stand them because a lot of the conversations I'm having is with other Christians, professing Christians, okay? And when you could talk to them about, well, I said, go read 1 Samuel 8, because if you're going to the voting booth, you're rejecting Christ as king. It's the same thing that's being described in 1 Samuel 8. Nothing has changed. And I can't get that to register in their brain. Even if they call themselves Christians, even if they read the same Bible that I'm reading, the same Bible that you're reading, Patrick, they can read 1 Samuel 8 and they don't see it as rejecting Christ as king. You're doing the same thing. You're asking for another king at the voting booth. It's the same thing. And I get way too frustrated with Christians during election years. But I'm glad it's over with. I'm glad they've got their new king. They can have their new king, and then we can go on about our lives, and I don't have to have these conversations again for another 2 to 4 years. But I'm going to have them here sporadically. I mean, there's a lot of, at the time of this recording, there's a lot of hope, in Donald Trump and all this stuff with among Christians. And I'm like, we've already seen 4 years of this guy. What more evidence do you need to see what's going to happen next? And everything you were just describing in 1 Samuel 8, just like you said, the language is antiquated, but we understand what he's talking about because nothing has changed. You keep putting these people in power over you and your neighbors and your family. The same thing happens over and over and over and over and over again. And it's like beating your head against the wall, and not recognizing that you are causing this by participating in this. Walk away from it and watch them. They'll go away. They can't sustain themselves if we don't give them the support that they're looking for. Anyway, that's my rant for the show. Maybe I might have another one later.
No, and I mean, when I was saying that, my voice almost cracked because when I still read that now, it still gets me every time. And what causes my voice to crack is God is just so merciful and forgiving. And when I read that, and I know that was me rejecting him, asking for a king, and it was like in your face, God. And until I had my eyes opened, and he allowed that, but then he forgave me and didn't hold it against me. And he took me back. He took me back after I rejected him in that way. And that's why it gets me every time I read that. And, the first time I read that, for me, it was like, oh, bleep. What have I been doing here? Uh-oh. Like, this is not good. And I don't know how you can read that without having that reaction, but that was very much my reaction the first time I read that. And when I say, I mean the day, I wish I could remember the exact day of 2021, but I mean the moment. It was instantaneous when I read that the first time. Whatever was left of my government and politics worshiping idol, it was completely smashed in an instant. The first time I ever read those words in 1 Samuel 8, it was a pretty profound moment for me. So yeah, to continue on, the story of Legion really made something from my past make a lot of sense. My grandma had told me when I was a little kid that if I ever feel like I'm having some kind of spiritual demonic attack, to just say Jesus's name over and over again. And I've done that several times throughout my life, and it's never failed me. And anyone who's had this happen will know exactly what I'm talking about. It's typically at night when you're sleeping, and it's just this feeling of complete dread and hopelessness that comes over you, and it comes out of nowhere, and it's really crazy and really scary. And every time that's happened to me, which has maybe been 10 to 15 times in my life, I've just said Jesus's name over and over again. And the spiritual attack has ended immediately. And it has never once failed me. And when I read the story of Legion, I understood why. So here's just a couple of verses from that story. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me. My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him from the area. So he sees Jesus far off, and he knows who he is. And he falls down on his knees, begging Jesus for mercy. And that is who Jesus is. The demons fall on their knees and beg him for mercy. And it's because of that I have complete faith and trust in Jesus, that if I'm experiencing what I can only call a demonic spiritual attack, that if I call out to Jesus for help, there is no battle that takes place. Jesus will help me, and it's immediate submission by the enemy, and they do not have a choice. They must obey Jesus. That is just the way it is, and that is the order of things. Jesus is Lord over them, and he has ultimate authority over them, and they have no choice but to submit to Jesus, and that's just the way it is. The parable of the laborers in the vineyard, this is the last one that I'll go over, but this one had a very profound impact on me as well. So this is the parable where the vineyard owner hires groups of people in the beginning, the middle, and the end of the day, and he pays them all the same, which is what they agree to work for. And the people who worked all day are angry when it's time to get paid, that they got paid the same as the people who only worked an hour. And the point of that parable is, it doesn't matter if you live your whole life as a virtuous Christian or if you live a life of depravity, but you find Jesus in a deep, meaningful way on your deathbed, that God values your soul the same. And what was so profound about it is the realization that my weak earthly brain, I hear that story and I think, that's BS. That's not fair. Like, no. But in my heart, I know that's true. And that's one of the things that showed me, this is something else. This is not the kind of thinking that's from mankind. This is from a much higher authority and a much higher power. And so that parable and coming to that realization had a very profound effect in just showing me and proving to me, this is the truth. This is from a much, much higher power. If there was more time, I would go into it, but yeah, I've struggled with being a very judgmental person. And so there's been a lot of parables in Jesus, things that Jesus said that have really set me free from that. Yeah, I used to have people that I considered political enemies and people who I thought were leading to the destruction of our country and society, who I used to have all sorts of uncharitable thoughts about. And my conversion has dramatically softened the way I look at those people. I don't look at them angrily anymore or as enemies, and I'm not on anybody's team anymore. I just have my fellow people, and being on a team is what the devil wants. When I'm on a team and thinking bad things about other people, that's where the devil does his best business, and he's laughing himself freaking silly about that. And I'm not playing that game anymore because Jesus has saved me, and I know the truth, and my eyes have been opened to that deception. And if other people are doing and thinking wrong, they're deceived. If I'm doing and thinking wrong, I'm deceived. And my only concern now is helping myself and others out of deception and toward Jesus. So while Jesus saved me from a time of great personal despair, he saved me from the pain and deception of this world. And I understand when he said, whoever loses their life, loves their life, will lose it. And the old me is dead, and I'm never going back. I'm even going as far as to have this giant patriotic tattoo removed that I got when I was 18. And it's not that I dislike our country now, or I'm like, oh, I hate America. It's nothing like that. I just don't worship the state anymore. And I don't want this symbol of state worship tattooed on my body anymore. And I don't worship our government or anything else for that matter. No King But Christ is the bumper sticker on my car now. And it used to be political bumper stickers. And the solutions to the problems of this world, they cannot be found in this world. We're not a self-correcting system. We need Jesus.
There's a lot of strange tattoos that people are getting these days when it comes to state worship. A lot of, I've seen some really weird ones when it comes to like Donald Trump. And thankfully during my tattoo phase, I think I've got one more tattoo in mind that I'm going to get, but I haven't quite settled on where to put it or if I'm even going to do it. But thankfully, during the closest I got to a statist tattoos, it's one of the backside of my artist is "Don't tread on me." But other than that, it's all it's all pretty whatever. I got some Jesus Anarchy tattoo on me as well, but thankfully I skipped over or did not get any kind of state worship tattoo because that'd be a hassle to try and go get something removed like that. I can imagine.
Oh, I wish I could say the same. Yeah, it was about 2 hours and $200 to get it in 2005, and 2 years and about $2,000 to make it go away. It's a pretty painful process to boot.
Well, we got probably about 20 minutes left, and we went through your testimony. What I'm really curious about, you touched on 1 Samuel 8, but what about like in the secular world that you were seeing the way you as a statist or where you were? Is there anything that you saw in the secular world that kind of started changing your mind as well? Not just the Bible, not just because a lot of my transformation, and anybody has listened to the show for however long we've been going, almost 5 years at this point, knows that a lot of my alignment with understanding No King But Christ kind of came together as I was getting sick of politics. Like in 2016, I was over it. It was the last time I ever voted was 2016. I voted way third party because I couldn't stand Donald Trump. But it was all kind of coming together all at once. Like nothing I was reading in the Bible from the first time I voted until 2016 was registering in my brain that I shouldn't be voting, that I shouldn't be participating in the kingdoms of this world. But when I got sick of it altogether and saw, I was just exhausted. Politics was exhausting to me, and I was tired of it. I was like, no, I'm not doing Donald Trump. But then I started kind of reading. Once my mind started opening up to that, or my eyes were opening up to that I was getting tired of it. It was exhausting, and I didn't feel like anything was getting better. It just seemed to be getting worse. That's when the stuff in the Bible started kind of opening up to me a little bit more. It's kind of like some of the what's the word I'm looking for? Not shackles. Something the scales fall from your eyes all of a sudden, and so you could see a little bit clearly, or a little more clearly. I wasn't seeing everything clearly when I first started seeing this stuff, but I could see some things I wasn't seeing before. And the more things I was seeing, the more I was seeing more. And then it just then I felt like, oh, I've discovered something completely new and nobody's ever heard of this before. And then it turns out I was completely wrong on that because a lot of people were feeling the same way. And a lot of people I've talked to on the show and friends I've made along the way with this project, it seems like our journey, our transition kind of all happened at the same point, at the same time too, which is pretty cool to me. So I'm kind of curious about yours because, it sounds like a lot of yours came from reading the Bible and really getting into the Bible, where the stuff that I'd already read in the Bible was revealed to me all of a sudden because my eyes were opening up to something else, and kind of like the secular world and stuff that I was spending too much time being involved with. Once I started kind of getting away from it, then all of a sudden I could see other things more clearly. And so I'm kind of curious if you had the same thing, if you had any kind of secular awakening or something in the secular world that kind of woke you up. I was like, you know what? I'm tired of this.
Oh, totally. I've got some great examples. One was the public school system. So if you just logic through it and you think, okay, I'm going to grant you that the founding fathers were great and all these founding documents were amazing. Okay, I'll grant you that. But by their own words, if the point of an education system is that an educated public is critical in defending itself against a tyrannical government, then how can you have the state doing the educating that's supposed to protect against the state? It doesn't even make like logical sense to have state-funded schools. You're allowing the fox to guard the hen house, and it just doesn't even make sense. So just like that kind of epiphany to me was one of the switches that got flipped of just like, this doesn't really make sense. It kind of seems like if the government is doing the educating, then they're obviously going to infuse some pro-government bias into that education system. The 2015 cultural battle, I think it was around 2015, around the Pledge of Allegiance, was a pretty major one for me. And when I first started talking to my buddy Eric about it, at that point in time, I was like, how can you're kind of an a-hole for wanting to get rid of the Pledge of Allegiance in schools. Like, how could you want that? And are you familiar with, I think it's a newer book called Myth of a Christian Nation?
Yes, but I have not read it.
Okay, got it. So his whole point, and which I totally agree with the author, it's a great book, is we should not call ourselves a Christian nation because we are taking the most perfect, beautiful thing, which is Jesus, and we're trying to attach this dirty, corrupt, man-made system that we've created with a government or politics. We're trying to attach something that is inherently flawed and will always be flawed, and we're trying to attach that to the perfect, and that's wrong. We shouldn't do that. If anyone who wants to have a discussion about, well, do nations that have Christian values, are they better? And okay, fine, we can have that separate discussion, but we should not identify our nation as a Christian nation because all we're doing is bringing down Jesus by attaching the stench of our man-made government that's inevitably going to fail to the perfect. So anyway, I don't think I'm absolutely against saying the Pledge of Allegiance in schools on that basis alone. But even if I grant you, okay, God had his hand on the founding of America. Okay, I'll grant you that, which I don't agree with, but for the sake of the argument, I'll grant you that. Listen to Jesus ripping the Pharisees a new one in Matthew 23:16. Woe to you, blind guides! You say, if anyone swears by the temple, it means nothing. But anyone who swears by the gold of the temple is bound by that oath. You blind fools, which is greater, the gold or the temple that makes the gold sacred? And now listen to this. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God. They're asking us to pledge allegiance to the flag and the nation and not the God who made the flag and the nation great. So even if I grant them their argument that God's hand was on the founding of the country, it's still going to be a no for me.
Well, you know what's so funny about that too, and I'll point this, and I've recently just got to the point where I don't know if it's so much taking a stand or it's just something I've just decided I'm not going to participate in. Is the whole, like, if you go to a sporting event, I don't stand up, I don't participate in, I was in, and I've told this story on the show before. I went to Memphis. I live outside of Memphis, and so I went to Memphis Grizzly basketball game. Everybody stood up and did the whole, start singing and all that stuff, and I just stayed seated. And I could hear all the jeers and people talking about me behind my back, and it's just where I'm at. I'm not participating anymore. But whenever I bring this, not just that specific story up to people, but I bring up what you're talking about as far as pledging allegiance to your status Christian, they're saying we're not pledging allegiance to the government. We're pledging allegiance to the Americans, our fellow man in America. I'm like, no, you're pledging allegiance to something that represents the government. You say it in the words, in the song you're singing, you're saying it. And how that is not even, it does not occur to people. It didn't occur to me, though, to be fair. It didn't occur to me when I was doing it. But it's so ritualistic, and it's very cultish. It's very cultish, and it's people are walking around in a trance. And I think we've all been there. It's why I like stories like this. We've all walked around in a trance, and all of a sudden you kind of break free. And that's why I said at the beginning of the show, I don't think it's fair for people who've been doing this for a little while to be hard on somebody new coming into it, because that's not fair, because everybody came from somewhere at some point. Now, if you were born into this world and you just automatically went straight to no king but Christ, man, I applaud you. That's cool. I think that's the neatest thing. And I would love to talk to that person. If there's anybody out there listening to this, if you were born into no king but Christ and you stayed that way this whole time, holler at me, because I want to talk to you on the show. But I've not met one person yet to this point that could say that to me, because we were all somewhere when all of a sudden when something happened that woke us up. Jesus uses his own time. God uses his own timeline to get to people. That's another thing. When people are trying to, or being hard on other folks, it's not up to you to change this person's heart. You can plant the seed. You can talk to them, just like your buddy Eric did with you. He planted some seeds with you, but it was on your timeline and God's timeline when this was going to come to fruition. So if you're listening to this and you're being hard on somebody who's not just getting it yet, just talk to them, just keep planting seeds. And, just remember, we're trying to reach a remnant that people are out there listening, but they don't know how to ask the right questions, but they're listening. So to quit being hard on people, take it easy and just keep talking to them like Patrick's buddy Eric did with him. Just keep talking to them. And then you're going to see this happen. And it's one of the coolest things that I've witnessed throughout 5 years of this project. I love it so much. These are one of my favorite conversations to have on this show. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you totally nailed it about giving people time, because it is hard. It's really hard. And that was important for me to fully appreciate the normalcy bias on a large scale and how we're indoctrinated as we're raised in this country. And every country does it in their own way. It is really difficult for people to let go of the idea that this big government structure that they've believed in and trusted their whole life doesn't actually care about them and doesn't have their best interest in mind. It is really hard to let go of that. And the normalcy bias says you don't want to see that. You don't want to let go of that. And part of it is that we're also just addicted to comfort. And that is one of the government's most powerful tools to control us. They are masters of playing the game of pushing things as far as they can without crossing that threshold of making people just too uncomfortable that they'll actually do something about it. But that normalcy bias, and people like the idea that this big government cares about them and like they're going to take care of you. They got you. Like it's going to be okay. And people don't want to let go of that and take on personal responsibility. They don't want to let go of that lie. You're biased to want to keep believing that because that's what's comfortable and easy. So letting go of that, it's really hard for a lot of people.
I remember, that reminds me of something. I remember when all the whole COVID stuff was first kicking off, my supervisor at the time, he said, I was like, this, I don't believe this because I don't believe anything the government's saying. This is really kind of, I was probably a good 2 years when I'm into where I was at. So 2018 is really kind of when I kind of started understanding a lot more than 2020. I had 2 years to kind of read a lot of things. And I was like, I don't trust anything the government says. Well, my supervisor at the time, he told me, so it's their job to take care of us.
Oh, wow.
And when he said that to me, I don't know what my face looked like, but I remember looking at him saying, no, you want me to put my faith and trust in people who are known murderers, known thieves, known liars to take care of me? What the hell are you talking about? It is not their job to take care. It's your job to take care of you.
Yeah.
It was just, you're right. People want to live comfortably. And it is too, you could talk to some of these people about how dishonest the government is, and they'll agree with you. They'll agree with it. They're all a bunch of liars. They're all a bunch of hypocrites, but then they'll turn right around and go put these people back in power.
Yeah.
Every single time.
I mean, Craig, at my worst, this is I should warn you, this is going to be nails on a chalkboard for you, but at my absolute worst, I mean, I couldn't wait to get home from work to turn on Sean Hannity and have him tell me how we were going to save America from the evil Democrats. I mean, that's just where I was. That's how that's how just lost I was at that point in my life.
Well, man, I used to watch 24 hours a day of Fox News. I'd fall asleep after work watching Fox News. And now I see it, and I've mentioned this, people who listen to the show know this. It's on in our break room at work. You got ESPN and Fox News. The sound's turned down, but you got the closed captions. And we'll be on break or something, and Sean Hannity's on there. And I look at him now, and I think, are people still watching this at this point? Are they still watching this? And I looked it up to see how many viewers he gets, and I guess he gets the most viewers of anybody on Fox News.
I know.
But it's still strange to me that people listen to him, because this dude is absolutely in love with government and in love with Donald Trump, and it's really gross. But to be fair, the left side of all of it, their news cycles or their 24-hour news channels are just as cringe.
Oh yeah,
it's all. If you can't see what's going on by watching CNN versus Fox News, if you can't see what's going on, you're completely blind, or you don't want to know. You are so dug in, and you're so dug into your belief systems in the government that you believe only your side is right. Like you just said, you couldn't wait to get home and see how we're going to destroy the evil Democrats. I was the same way. When you said that, yeah, I mean, if you were trying to convince me of that now, it would be nails on the chalkboard. But I used to be the same guy. Like I said, I used to fall asleep watching that stuff. And now it's a comedy. To me, it's got to be satire at this point.
Oh, I know. Yeah. And Eric kept telling me, man, both sides are the same. Both sides are the same. And I fought it so much. And this is why I'm saying, God bless Eric. He was so patient with me, but I kept fighting it and saying, no, they're not both the same. Like, my side's right. My side's better. And then one day I realized that is absolutely true. Both sides are the same, and they just market their brand of politics to one half the country or the other.
I'm going to tell you something that's going to sound very cringe, and it's something I said back in the day when watching Fox News when I was dug in, and I don't know why I remember saying this, but I remember it. But I remember now listening to you talk. But I said, why is it that Fox News is the only channel on that's telling the truth?
I can so relate.
I remember. Now I actually made a Facebook post that was my Facebook. I wasn't asked the question out randomly. I made a Facebook post. Why is Fox News the only channel that is telling the truth?
Craig, I'm the one with the giant red, white, and blue tattoo on my back, so no judgment here. I can relate. Yeah.
Well, at least it's not Jesus draped in that red, white, and blue. Those are worse.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So there was a lot in the secular world. That's why my whole story, the way that everything happened for me, just having my eyes opened kind of in a secular way, just my come to Jesus experience in my life with the personal tragedy I experienced, and then reading the Bible, the way everything happened in such incredible harmony that the hand of God is on that. I could not have, in my wildest imagination, have dreamed up a situation whereby my eyes would have been opened and I would have been set free so effectively. So for me, it was just a combination of everything. But like 1 Samuel 8 and some of those other parts of the Bible, that really drove home to me that government is never something to be celebrated. It is nothing more than a product of our human weakness and our desire to form power structures and to rule over each other, or to just be lazy and abdicate our personal responsibility to others. And at best, the most brilliant, amazing, perfect government that our flawed human brains could come up with, the best government we could ever come up with, at best, we're just polishing a turd. And it's not a matter of if, but when it will inevitably fail.
Yeah, they always do. They always do. And try to keep it going is just silly, asinine to me. I don't get it. Hey, folks. We have set up a very simple way to donate to the Bad Roman Project through spotfund.com. Just go to SpotFund and search No King But Christ. This has become necessary to continue to provide a quality podcast and keep production costs down as well. Just $5 or $10 a month will go a long way in helping us keep this project going and continue spreading the very basic message of no king but Christ. So if you like what we were doing and can find it within your budget, go to spotfund.com and search No King But Christ, and you can set up monthly donations or even donate one time. Any and all donations help more than you know, and as always, any donations above production costs will go directly to charities in Memphis, Tennessee. Thank y'all so much. Now back to the show. Well, we've gone about an hour now, Patrick, and this has been a fun conversation. I like the fact that you can carry a conversation. It makes my job a whole lot easier on this end, and hopefully it can be shared with other people kind of on the fence, and they can kind of listen to your story, and it'll kind of get them over that hump that they're having a hard time getting past, you know. So before I let you go, won't you plug where we can find your podcast? You got at the time of this recording, it's a brand new podcast, not a lot of content, but it sounds like you've got some content ready to publish at some point. So maybe by the time this episode's published, you'll have more content out there. But it is very new. But go ahead and tell us where we can find that.
Yeah. So right now I'm trying to just build up maybe 10 or 12 Christian. So the podcast is called 100-Fold Testimonies, and all it is a platform for people to come on and share their Christian testimony. And it's not really like this podcast. It's not much of a discussion. It's more just a platform for people to tell their story of how Jesus saved their life. And I'm so passionate about Christian testimonies because when I was going through my own transformation, I listened to a lot of other Christian testimonies and kept hearing the same things. And all of our stories are so different, but yet we're all telling the same story of being lost and found. And it just had a very profound effect on me. So you can find it on Apple Podcast or Spotify. It's called 100-Fold Testimonies. But the biggest thing that I would love is if anyone's out there who feels called to share their Christian testimony, if you could email me, it's 100foldtestimonies@gmail.com. That's 100foldtestimonies@gmail.com. I'd love to talk to you and have you on to tell your story.
I know a lot of people that follow this podcast that would probably fit nicely on your show to tell their story. I think that would be awesome. So yeah, if y'all are listening to this and you want to go on his show and tell your testimony, do it. I would love to listen to that.
Well, thank you, Craig.
And hopefully anybody else listen to this, if you got a story you want to tell me or Patrick, holler at us. We'll get you on and we'll talk about it. I like conversations like this a whole lot. It's one of my favorite ones.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Bad Roman Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcasts to never miss an episode. And while you're at it, if you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, it really helps people find us. 100% of donations are given to local charities in Memphis, Tennessee. To learn more about the Bad Roman Project and to find show notes, please visit thebadroman.com.